You can pay anywhere between £5,000 and £45,000 for a classic or vintage camper van. We paid the lower end of that for this little vehicle, but have spent a substantial amount since then. This particular video is all about the clutch master cylinder, slave cylinder, and the clutch arrangement in this van. It is completely unique, like no other vehicle I've ever seen. And we must have had the gearbox in and out 2 or 3 times to actually replace the clutch. The clutch kit that we got from the Cambria, but unfortunately it's completely different on this vehicle and none of this fits, so I'm hoping that we'll be able to send this back to them. And this is the clutch disc that came off the vehicle. You can see that that's very different clutch disc to the one they sent us. In the event, we were able to get the correct clutch plate from eBay from these guys here, Dr. Carr. We've used them before. Really good, really quick delivery. £44.40 for that clutch plate. Preemptively fitted a clutch. The clutch didn't actually work, and they're not sure why. They've bled it twice, so we're going to change the clutch master cylinder, which is hopefully this, and at the same time we might as well change the brake master cylinder. You can see that the clutch cylinder we got from Cambria, which is here, is absolutely fine, but the brake master cylinder is a completely different size and length. So I asked them to take this clutch hose off, and what was happening was when you put your foot on the clutch, you saw a slight expanding and bulging just here. And of course, once I got this clutch hose off, when I blew down it, it was completely blocked. And what happened when they had bled the clutch is all the gunk had basically congregated in this pipe, and I imagine also that the internal rubbers all started disintegrating. So you would think it would be nice and easy to get a new hose pipe like this, but these are not standard fittings. It's an M10 on one side, M12 on the other side with fine threads. So we have not been able to easily get one of those, but I'm hoping that just arrived in the post today, just the day after I ordered it on Friday, is this hose. If it is, we'll be able to get our van back and go camping this weekend. So the moment of truth. I would be amazed if this is the same fitting. Let's have a little look, see, shall we?
I think it is.
It looks the same. What do you think? No. That is not an M10, is it, on that side?
Sadly, it is not. So, are you going to send that back then?
Well, possibly, but what we might be able to do is cut that off and get them to crimp a male fitting on there.
That'll be quite clever.
Cool. So we drove back out to Pertec, the hose people, to see if they could cut this off and put a male fitting on, but they couldn't, unfortunately, because 2 reasons. This is brake hose here, and this is the clutch hose. They're actually slightly different thicknesses. Apparently, clutch hose is always a bit thicker than brake hose, and the fittings that they would have, and they would have had to have ordered them anyway, would be too big to put on a brake hose. So that, unfortunately, is a non-runner for an idea. So the problem that everyone is having is that this fitting here is an M12 with a 1.25 thread, and it's attaching to a fitting here which is an M10 1.25 thread. So we've driven all the way up from Bristol to a company called Think Auto. Now they are the leading specialists in car hydraulics. If they can't do it, nobody can. What do you think, Grace? Are you feeling confident?
Yeah, because they sounded pretty confident when we asked them what they needed to do.
They do sound like they know what they're talking about. It's a busy place and they've disappeared in the back. So Think Auto were able to make us up a hose here. Grace chose the colour to match with the van. It looks thinner than normal hose, but it's actually the internal diameter which is important. So with that clutch hose fitted, there was still a problem. Got everything back together, went for a test drive. Horrible grinding, crunching sound coming from the gearbox clutch. So gearbox back out. The gearbox of our Fiat 238, and we've put a new clutch plate on. It didn't work initially because the clutch hose was blocked, and then when they got the new clutch hose and put it in, it didn't work because the whole slave cylinder, which is housed inside here, is basically disintegrated. There's a roller bearing and a casing and a rod that passes all the way through here that is basically damaged, Now we're going to have to see if we can get one of those bearings, because I cannot anywhere see or find people who actually sell the kit. The rubber seal here and the actual roller bearing, that's the thrust washer there. There's a great company in Holland called Martin Willems, which supplies all sorts of Fiat 238 parts, and they supply this here, which I had assumed was the slave cylinder, but in actual fact it's just the housing and not the slave cylinder itself, which sits in there. That's the part number of the housing there. That's the first point. And the clutch hose that they supply, which they sent, does not fit, because that, as I mentioned, is a fine thread in there, and what they've sent there is not a fine thread, so that does not fit in there. So we've driven out to Brislington in Bristol to a company called Anti-Friction, and they have got the roller bearing that we need. They seem to have the right bearing. Whether that fits or not, we will soon find out. Just £2.83. £2 bearing here could be the thing that gets the van back on the road, Rob. What do you reckon?
I reckon so.
Do you reckon there's any chance of getting that van back on the road by Friday? Because we've got the all-time camping trip planned.
Where are you going?
Swanage with a bunch of people.
Oh, right. Well, I can stay on late and get them done.
That's it. How long does it take to put everything back together if you had all the bits?
Could be 4 or 5 hours work or something.
Really?
Back, yeah.
Holy schmoly.
Well, we'll do our best.
So we got all the clutch back together, the right bearing, etc. But what's happening is, this is basically the clutch slave cylinder. It's a really crazy setup. And what's happening is the clutch is not fully disengaging. Basically, when you put your foot down on the clutch, this rod here is moving forward and should disengage and engage the clutch. But they're thinking maybe that this rod here has become too short, or is too short. So the only solution I can think is to get another rod machined up and kind of almost trial and error, see, you know, maybe add 5mm on that and see if that makes a difference. But maybe over the years this rod has just worn down, because before we put the new clutch in, there was only a few millimeters of clutch left. You had to press the clutch pedal quite a way to get that clutch to engage. But I would say the chance of getting that sorted today is 0, unfortunately, which is a shame. This is the rod that came out of our van here. You can see it's just under 29 centimeters long, and what we had to do was get one of these machined up and add about ½ centimeter to it. I'm not sure what length these are supposed to be. You can see this one has got burn marks at the end, but in the event, as I say, we had to get one made up, machined, and then hardened at the end, because this piece here is actually sitting in the spinning bearing. We didn't get this van back in time for a camping trip to Swanage, but we have just had a fantastic weekend in Wales. 200-mile trip, and the van performed absolutely fine with the engine running well. The point of doing these videos is to try and save people time and money. If we had known what we know now about the clutch system on this van, we could have bought the parts for less than £100 and probably paid no more than a couple of £100 in labour to actually get it fitted. In the event, we spent Grace's inheritance in labour getting that clutch sorted out. It's just one of those things you need to be aware of when you buy a classic or vintage vehicle. We got our clutch master cylinder from these guys here, a Cambio for the Fiat 238. They do a whole host of parts for all sorts of Fiats and Lancias. The wonderful thing about this company is they send stuff out super quick, so if you buy something one day, you'll generally get it the next day. The clutch disc from these guys here, Dr. Car Parts via eBay, they don't have a huge range of Fiat 238 parts, but they do have the correct clutch disc, and I think we also got the timing belt from them as well via eBay. We drove up to London to these guys here, Think Automotive, to get that specialist clutch hose made up, and they were absolutely fantastic. They really know what they're doing. There were people in there rebuilding Ferraris, Lamborghinis. The guy I spoke to said they do an awful lot of stuff for old Mercedes as well. So if you do ever need any hydraulic hoses made up, definitely worth checking them out. Guys who did the work on our clutch with these guys in Bristol, Auto Classico, as I've mentioned before, they are not the cheapest people you'll ever find. but they are fantastic, especially some of the older boys that work for that company, and they will get the job done and they'll take care to do it properly.